Recording has started.
Thank you. Good afternoon. The Senate Committee on Human Services, Mental Health, and Recovery will come to order. It is not March 18th. Hold on. It is actually March 23rd. Today, welcome, and we will start by calling the roll. Terry, would you please check us in?
Senator Lieber.
Senator Lieber is present by video.
Senator Robinson.
Excused.
Senator Taylor.
Taylor present by video.
Vice Chair Anderson.
Anderson is here by video.
Chair Gelser.
Gelser is here by video. It looks like we have all arrived. I want to make a quick disclaimer. I did something to my router and I thought I fixed it, but it is now acting up again. So if I disappear, please just continue on, Mr. Vice Chair. Cheyenne will help you keep going. Today we have a series of public hearings and we have a number of work sessions. One of the challenges with the work sessions in the digital environment is we miss those opportunities to check in on the floor. The bills that we have up today, it's been a while since we heard them. So we do have people here that are able to answer questions about things that were asked or to refresh our memories as we go through them. If as we get to them, you feel like you need another day, we can hold them over until next Thursday. So if that becomes the case, let me know. I think the other thing that would really help for committee planning, we have not heard all of the bills yet that are in the committee, but we had to post all of the bills for work session through the end of our period. So if you could take some time to look through the list and identify places where you definitely want to make sure that we have people come back to offer some clarifications, or you're looking for more information, or maybe you just really have concerns about moving forward with that bill. If you could let me know, that would be great. I think that happens a lot more naturally when we're all together in the building, but I want to make sure that we're getting the right information out to the people that have worked on their measures so that they can be doing their work to get their bills passed or get them moved on to coming back for consideration some other time. So any questions about that before we dive into these? And I think my intention for today with the work session, since this is the first set that we have, and because all of them were so long ago, I'll have us go through each, see if you have any questions, and then before we ask for the motion, we'll see if people are comfortable. So we'll actually open the work session, have the conversation before we move in about where the things have been before we move into the motions. Does that make sense for everybody? All right. And Cheyenne, Senate Bill 90 is ready. We have the paperwork.
Madam Chair, yes. Senate Bill 90 is ready.
All right. So I'm going to open up a work session on Senate Bill 90.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Senate Bill 90 was heard on the 4th of February. It's the one that protects the addresses of persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities who reside in specified homes or facilities from disclosure pursuant to a public records request, and it takes effect the 91st day after sine die adjournment. It has no fiscal impact, no revenue impact. There is a -1 amendment that relocates the content of the measure. There are a couple of separate sections in the public records statutes, and it makes the records disclosable upon a showing that it's in the public interest.
Thank you. And I believe we have Lilia Tenenty on the line. Lilia, could you talk us through the process and the -1 amendment, why that's significant where it was moved? Lilia, are you here, Lilia Tenenty, or anybody from DHS?
Chair and members of the committee, I've scrolled through the list of meeting attendees. I know that she signed up as a resource today, but I don't see her on that list.
I see her. She's waiting in the lobby.
There we go. We're admitting her now.
Thank you. Lilia, can you hear us?
Yes, Chair Gelser, members of the committee.
Great. So we were asking if you could walk us through this -1 amendment to Senate Bill 90 and how we got to this, or how you got to this place, and just a reminder of the what and why of this bill since it was such a long time ago.
Thank you. Chair Gelser, members of the committee, Senate Bill 90 was introduced by Governor Brown on behalf.
Start with your name for the record.
Oh,
Sorry.
my name is Lilia Tenancy. I'm the director for the Office of Developmental Disability Services in the Oregon Department of Human Services. My apologies. Senate Bill 90 was introduced by Governor Brown on behalf of the Office of Developmental Disability Services. Ultimately, the bill seeks to limit release of information, addresses for individuals who reside in adult foster homes and our developmental disability group homes. We worked with a number of stakeholders during the process and to develop the bill, and during the public hearing on February 4th, we heard concerns regarding the ability to release information that might be in the public interest or during an investigation. In response, we've worked through the -1 amendment, which ultimately moves the bill into ORS 192.345. It moves it to a different section of the statute. In this section of the statute, it allows for release of this information when it has been determined to be in the public interest to disclose the information in a particular instance. This will allow the department to review the request for records and determine whether the request is in the public interest. If a request is denied, the requester can appeal to the Department of Justice, who will make the final decisions. At this point, we haven't heard any concerns regarding this particular amendment. And we continue to believe this bill is needed, and by making this change, using this amendment, that we think it addresses the concerns that we've heard raised in prior hearings and that may have been raised with you in other discussions. We want to ensure that individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities have protections and equal access to privacy and freedom from having their public information like addresses made widely available based solely on the fact that they're a person with an intellectual developmental disability living in a particular type of setting. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Lilia about Senate Bill 90? I am not seeing any. Thank you very much, Lilia. Committee, are we okay to move forward with this one, or would you like to carry it over for another day?
I'm fine to move forward.
Okay.
Chair, I'll make a motion if that's all right.
All right, sounds good.
Chair Gelser, I move to adopt the -1 amendment to Senate Bill 90.
Chair Anderson moves to adopt the -1 amendments to Senate Bill 90. Is there any discussion? All right, Terry, could you please call the roll?
Senator Lieber,
Senator Lieber votes aye.
Senator Robinson,
Excused?
Senator Taylor,
Senator Taylor votes aye.
Vice Chair Anderson,
Anderson votes aye.
Chair Gelser.
Gelser votes aye. And Senator Anderson, could we have another amendment, another motion?
Chair Gelser, I move Senate Bill 90 as amended to the floor with a do pass recommendation.
Senator Anderson moves Senate Bill 90 as amended to the floor with a do pass recommendation. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Terry, could you please call the roll?
Senator Lieber,
Senator Lieber votes aye.
Senator Robinson,
Excused?
Senator Taylor,
Senator Taylor votes aye.
Vice Chair Anderson,
Anderson votes aye.
and Chair Gelser.
Gelser votes aye. Having received the required votes, the motion passes and heads to the floor. Senator Anderson, would you be willing to carry this one?
Certainly.
Great, thank you very much. And with that, we will close the work session on Senate Bill 90. Thank you, DHS, for coming to help us with that one. And Cheyenne, we have our paperwork for 97, correct?
That's correct, Madam Chair.
All right. I'm going to open a work session on Senate Bill 97.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Senate Bill 97 was heard on March the 2nd. This measure has a minimal fiscal impact and no revenue impact. There was also a -1 amendment. This is a measure that prohibits compelled testimony and documents from the Residential Facilities Ombudsman's Office in administrative or judicial proceedings. The effect of the amendment is that it specifies that the prohibition applies to materials that are related to complaints concerning residents. It's a refinement to the same effect of the underlying measure. It also creates exceptions to allow disclosure under certain circumstances, except disclosure of materials that are provided to the Ombuds Office by the system of which it is a part that is designed to protect the individuals with disabilities or mental health challengers. It also provides exceptions for when the Ombuds personnel witness a felony, when a complaint alleges imminent risk of harm, when it is requested by the resident or their authorized representative, unless that is otherwise prohibited, when a resident or their authorized representative requests authentication, when law enforcement investigates criminal conduct, when records pertain to the facility operations generally, or if the Ombuds program or process, but not to particular individuals. And upon receipt of a court order that contains specified findings that compel the release. There are certain other refinements and an additional term is defined.
Thank you so much, Cheyenne. And if you all recall, we had a lot of discussion about this bill when we heard it. I know that the Long-Term Care Ombudsman's Office and Tony in particular worked with the Oregon Trial Lawyers Association. I don't know about the rest of you, but I received an email today and a text message from the Oregon Trial Lawyers Association saying that their concerns had been resolved. I do believe we have folks here from Disability Rights Oregon, the Long-Term Care Ombudsman's Office, and OTLA, if any of you have any questions for any of them. Anyone? All right, are people okay with moving forward with this work session today?
Chair Gelser, I move to adopt the -1 amendments to the Senate Bill 97.
Vice Chair Anderson moves to adopt the -1 amendments to Senate Bill 97. Is there any discussion? I would just like to thank everybody that worked on this. I know this was tricky, and I think some good new relationships were formed in the process, and it's just always great to see a work group turn out that way, where people come away happy with their result and happy with the people that they have met. So to everyone that worked on this, thank you. That was fun to get all your feedback afterwards. Terry, could you please call the roll?
Senator Lieber,
Senator Lieber votes aye.
Senator Robinson,
Excused?
Senator Taylor,
Senator Taylor votes aye.
Vice Chair Anderson,
Anderson votes aye.
Chair Gelser.
Gelser votes aye. Senator Anderson.
Chair Gelser, I move Senate Bill 97 as amended to the floor with a due pass recommendation.
Thank you. Vice Chair Anderson moves Senate Bill 97 as amended to the floor with a due pass recommendation. Is there any discussion? All right, Terry, would you please call the roll?
Senator Lieber,
Senator Lieber votes aye.
Senator Robinson,
Excused?
Senator Taylor,
Senator Taylor votes aye.
Vice Chair Anderson,
Anderson votes aye.
Chair Gelser.
Gelser votes aye. Having received the required votes, the motion passes and heads to the floor. Senator Lieber, would you carry this one since it's got the legal pieces to it?
I will, thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I'll close the work session on Senate Bill 97. And Cheyenne, is Senate Bill 51 on our ready to go list?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, that is the only measure that is possible to be acted on today that's not yet ready. And I'm watching the fiscal and revenue impact statement system for statements to come up, but that one you would have to skip if you wanted to move it without suspending the rules.
And we also need to skip 515 and 535, correct?
515 is ready just before the start of today's meeting.
Okay.
And 535 is also ready. Everything else but 51 is
Okay,
ready.
great.
The committee is inclined.
Okay, great. All right, I would like to open up a work session on Senate Bill 515.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Senate Bill 515 was heard on the 25th of February. This measure requires certain employees regulated by the Oregon Liquor Control Commission to report reasonable beliefs of suspected trafficking or unlawful employment of minors at their places of employment to the OLCC and to law enforcement. It provides for immunity from liability for good faith reporting and makes these preceding provisions operative January 1st. It also authorizes OLCC to sanction regulated employees for failure to report, and it takes effect the 91st day after sine die. There's a minimal fiscal and no revenue impact and no amendments.
Thank you. I don't have anyone here to talk about this one. Are people okay with moving forward with this one?
Madam Chair, Chair Gelsler, I move Senate Bill 515 to the floor with a due pass recommendation.
Vice Chair Anderson moves Senate Bill 515 to the floor with a due pass recommendation. Is there any discussion?
Senator Gelser.
Yes.
My only question on this one is there going to be any training around the discussion around what's about the reasonable suspect of trafficking in the bill?
Let me pull it back up. I've got all these screens open here to get my notes back up.
And I can help clarify as well, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
There was very limited discussion. This is the permitted employees on the premises, and they are required to have permits, and there's a training that allows them to receive that permit. And the discussion was to include it as part of the existing training for permits that they already receive. I don't know that there is the kind of detail that you've just described, but that is something that is OLCC uses rulemaking to craft the training and to issue the permits.
Okay, I see. Thank you. And that'll be training through OLCC, who does the permitting. All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Cheyenne. I'm good to go, Senator Gelser.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. Terry, can you please call the roll?
Senator Lieber,
Senator Lieber votes aye.
Senator Robinson,
Excused?
Senator Taylor,
Senator Taylor votes aye.
Vice Chair Anderson,
Anderson votes aye.
Chair Gelser.
Gelser votes aye. Having received the required votes, it heads to the floor. Senator Taylor, would you carry this one, please?
Actually, I think Senator Gerard, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I was going to give him the next one. He's got a twofer here, but I can give him both.
Yeah, I think it's his, just based on my information. I could be wrong. We can always change it later, but I think that's my information, but I could be wrong.
Thank you. Let's assign that to Senator Gerard. All right, with that, I'm going to close the work session on Senate Bill 515 and open up a work session on Senate Bill 535.
Chair Gelser, members of the committee, Senate Bill 535 was heard on the 25th of February. It has a minimal fiscal and no revenue impact. This is a measure that adds hotel and innkeepers to the list of mandatory reporters of suspected child abuse. It also modifies the crime of failure to report child abuse by those who process imagery and effectively makes them mandatory reporters as well. There's no amendment. There's no amendment.
Thank you. And I would clarify the one thing, they are mandatory reporters, but it's shifting the way that they report, because when we did the Central Child Abuse Hotline, before that, you had to report to the law enforcement or the DHS in your county, and this is to the central, because now it doesn't matter. You just call the one number, I think. Vice Chair Anderson.
Chair Gelser, I move Senate Bill 535 to the floor with a due pass recommendation.
Senator Anderson moves Senate Bill 535 to the floor with a due pass recommendation. Is there an amendment to this one, Cheyenne? No.
Madam Chair, members, no, there's no amendment to this.
Okay, great. So I was looking at 5-1, not 515. All right, so Vice Chair Anderson moves Senate Bill 535. Sorry, let me start over. Let's know what we're voting on. Senator Anderson moves Senate Bill 535 to the floor with a due pass recommendation. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Terry, would you please call the roll?
Senator Lieber,
Senator Lieber votes aye.
Senator Robinson,
Excused.
Senator Taylor,
Senator Taylor votes aye.
Vice Chair Anderson,
Anderson votes aye.
Chair Gelser.
Gelser votes aye. Having received the required votes, the measure moves to the floor, and we will also assign this one to Senator Girard. I'll close the work session on Senate Bill 535 and open up a work session on Senate Bill 563.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, Senate Bill 563 is the measure that was heard on March the 2nd that expands applicability of provisions governing youth suicide intervention and prevention to include children in the 5 to 10 age range. The statute now applies to 10 and up. This would make it 5 and up. There is a -1 amendment, but I don't believe the committee was inclined to move or to act on that. There's no fiscal impact and no revenue impact.
Thank you. And colleagues, we heard this bill a few weeks ago, and if you recall, we had a conversation about there's a companion bill or an identical bill in the House, except for that it dropped the age all the way to 0. This one started at age 5. The stakeholders went away, came back, and said they preferred to keep it at age 5. Representative Prusek, who's the chief sponsor on the House side, also agreed with that and asked that we move this vehicle instead without amendment. Are people okay moving forward with this one? All right, Senator Anderson.
Chair Gelser, I move Senate Bill 563 to the floor with a due pass recommendation.
Senator Anderson moves Senate Bill 563 to the floor with a due pass recommendation. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Terry, would you please call the roll?
Senator Lieber,
Senator Lieber votes aye.
Senator Robinson,
Excused.
Senator Taylor,
Senator Taylor votes aye.
Vice Chair Anderson,
Anderson votes aye.
Chair Gelser.
Gelser votes aye. Having received the required votes, Senate Bill 563 heads to the floor, and I will carry this one. Close the work session on Senate Bill 563. Cheyenne, did we get 51 back, or should we move on to public hearings?
I'll refresh my screen, do a quick double check. Not yet, Madam Chair, members of the committee, the fiscal statement is still pending.
All right, so we will come back. And Cheyenne, if we run out of time, will you help me to remember to carry it over if we don't
Absolutely.
get to it? Thank you. That would be very sad. All right. With that, we are going to. I'm going to go with the ones that have the smallest number of people signed up first so that those folks can get on their way. I'm going to open up a public hearing on Senate Bill 721.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Senate Bill 721 requires the Consumer Advocacy Council or a 7-member committee appointed by the council to submit a list of candidates for council membership to the Oregon Health Authority. It also refines the council's advisory duties, and it takes effect the 91st day after sine die.
Thank you very much. And we have Kevin Fitz from Portland signed up to talk to us about this one.
Good morning, Good afternoon, Senator Gelser and committee. My name is Kevin Fitz. I'm a volunteer with the Oregon Mental Health Consumers Association. This is the acronym for this organization, for this council is called OCAC, the Oregon Consumer Advisory Council. This council was created by the Oregon State Legislature about 11 years ago with one goal: to have a council membership of 25 members from across the state of Oregon, individuals who are self-identified as either currently or previously had the experience of mental health challenges, addictions, problem gambling. This is the only consumer-only council within the Oregon Health Authority that looks at behavioral health. Its mandate is to give recommendations and feedback to the Behavioral Health Administration within the Oregon Health Authority. For the record, I'm the vice chair of this council, but I'm not speaking for this council. I'm speaking as an independent community member who brought this bill forward. Particularly, I and the individual that helped me shape this wanted to use this opportunity to bring your attention that this council exists. I know that there's an awful lot of these activities going on within the state executive and administrative agencies. However, I don't think that we get enough visibility in formal actions such as Secretary of State's audits and in formal hearings at the state legislature. So that was one of the rationales for bringing this forward. I just want to say I support this measure of self-governance for the council. I think, you know, and not that there's been a challenge with it, but I think the independence of consumer voice when you're up against industry and bureaucracy and political leadership that has a particular direction, it's hard, it's very challenging to have an equitable seat at the table. And one of the things I think it would be a vote of confidence by the legislature to say, we approve of your ability to self-govern and choose your membership. There has been incidents in the past where individuals had, one incident and one individual was asked to leave the board, leave the council by the state administrator. And that is a complicated issue. But it brought up the issue of who gets to choose our leadership, who gets to choose our members. And I just think it would be a vote of confidence and in our development and sophistication as a very engaged council. We actually brought forth last year 4 products for Governor Brown to suggest for legislative session 2021. So I'm just here to support this. I think it makes sense. I think the council has the confidence of the consumers who serve on it and the administration of doing good work and very engaged in what we're tasked to do. And I'm glad to be here and thank you. Excuse me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Are there any questions for Kevin? I don't see any. Is there anyone else? I don't have anyone else signed up to speak to this measure.
Madam
Cheyenne?
Chair?
Yes?
Yes, I was just going to butt in. There was a last-minute update with last-minute sign-up, so there are a few additional names that were sent when the meeting, I believe, was just getting underway, so you might not have seen that in your email.
Okay.
It's 3 additional.
Okay, let me
2
find
additional individuals.
Wow, there was a lot of emails since we started this hearing. Okay. All right, Drake Eubank, please.
Trying to unmute and on. Anyways, my name is Drake Eubank. I'm a qualified mental health associate, peer specialist, and personal support worker, which is my most recent active job assignment. And I also have a small consultancy in Eugene. I've worked in peer services since the genre was created, but I also happen to be involved in the creation of the council itself. I was, along with Becky Child, who some of you may know, I helped Senator Morissette draft the legislation for the council itself back in the days when they wouldn't actually pay you for mileage because everything went through Ways and Means. Anyways, it was combined with a bill that actually wanted to have an office, independent office of consumer technical assistance as well, but this is the one that made it through the legislative process. What I would like to say about the formation of it, and if Bob Nickel is here, I think he's on the list of guests. I don't know if he's testifying, a former director. At the time it was done, it was absolutely intended to be an independent body, and nobody in their wildest dreams, because of the normative policies of the division up to that time to include and encourage independent voices, ever thought that the leadership at the mental health division would begin selecting the ideologies that they preferred out of the membership. And so it did end up where the division, because of the way the rules are written, began taking over the selection process. The peer genre is really not of any use to anyone. Those opinions that people might hold, or those things that they might bring in terms of new efforts to help people and support people, those are original to the peer movement and the consumer movement. And some of them fall outside of the beaten path of the typical drugs and counseling sort of genre that exists right now. So that makes it sort of a natural exception. And if you're soliciting the opinions that are going to improve services, you really need to be able to have somebody to speak honestly and frankly. And in fact, Bob Nickel, I have letters from him around this that basically stated that that was his interest in getting a direct view from the street level of what the services look like and what could be improved. And this would ensure that the independence of the council is maintained. It has a pretty good mechanism for a dual selection mechanism, which combines the council with outside peer-run agencies so that they can have a selection process that will have a sufficient diversity of voices within the peer community as well. So I highly support this, and I'm sorry it has to even occur. We wouldn't have imagined when we put the legislation together that it would be an issue, but it has, because we occupy a fairly controversial area of health. So, and there's some natural dichotomies that exist, as part of the ecosystem of people sharing alternative viewpoints. So, anyways, that's all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions about how it was created or what it was intended to be, but this is just a correction to its original meaning, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you so much. Any questions? Senator Leeper.
Thank you so much, Chair Gelser. So it says here that the bill requires the council to submit a list of potential candidates for OHA, but can OHA still also have a list of candidates?
My understanding of the way the bill is written is that the candidates would be essentially selected from peer population, so the actual community, and not subject to the division's interjections. So that would be, they could suggest it to the nominating committees that are created, but they wouldn't have the ability to directly input. And again, that's my understanding of how the legislation is written.
So your intent in this is that only the council members would be able to submit names from which OHA makes appointments.
Only a combination of council members and independent peer-run organizations. There's a formation part of the statute for that external. So it's not just self-selection by the council, but it is self-selection by the peer community. That's how we were trying to balance that guarantee that it's not just good old boy networks.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate the clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions for Drake? Seeing none, thank you so much. And next up, we have Bob Nickel.
Can you see and hear me?
I can hear you, and now I can see you. Okay. Welcome.
Now, I'm here, this is Bob Nickel, Chair Gelser, and members of the committee, and I'm here to testify on Senate Bill 680. So is that where we are?
No, we are on Senate Bill 721. Yeah. So I will add you to the 680 list.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else that is here for Senate Bill 721? And Senator Lieber, do you have a question, or is that your old question? Looks like.
Apologies, Chair Gelser. I will lower my hand.
No worries. Just don't want to ignore you.
Senator Gelser, I'd like to speak on 721, if I may.
All right, Ann Casper.
All right. Senator Gelser, members of the committee, I am, for the record, Ann Casper. I'm here in support of 721, and I was on the original OCAC, I guess it's more than 11 years ago now, because it wasn't put into motion until 11 years ago officially, and Bob Nichols started it, and we're very grateful to that. One point I would really agree upon around 721 is the help for administrative help. That is in point 6 something on the second page. It is really important that they have administrative help. Right now, it's really hard to even get the minutes on the website. It's hard to know what's going on if they can't get that help from OHA. So thank you for supporting 721.
Thank you. Any questions for Ann? Seeing none, and since I have nobody else signed up, I'm going to close the public hearing on Senate Bill 721. And I'm going to open the hearing on Senate Bill 725. And Cheyenne, is it okay if we just jump into this one quickly for purposes of time?
Yes, Madam Chair, and you had given a brief at the last meeting before carrying it over for today already, so.
Thank you. And colleagues, Senate Bill 725, I guess to start, for the record, I'm Sarah Gelser, State Senator from Corvallis and Albany. I introduced Senate Bill 725. We talked about this briefly last week. This is the issue of trying to help the department, which currently does not have the tools within our system to rein in organizations that are very different from the vast majority of the organizations in our state. So when you have a very large for-profit corporation come in from out of state, the size of fines that DHS would need to impose upon them for violations would be inappropriate to impose upon the vast majority of small providers that operate here in the state of Oregon within the developmental disability system. And all of the fines you have to have equity across the system. So we've been trying to figure out how to make sure that the department has the tools that they need to address these issues without unduly burdening the lifeline to our DD system, which are all of the small independent providers across the state of Oregon. As it was originally drafted, and I mentioned this last week and said I would come back with more detail, the bill simply said that moving forward, no new organizations could be a for-profit organization. And that was an overly simple distinction, because the issue really isn't whether an organization is for-profit or not for-profit. The issue is how close is that management to the organization, to the people that it's serving, and to kind of the values of the state and the size of the organization. So the amendments that have been submitted on this bill would be similar to the -1 amendments, which kind of narrow that piece of ensuring that if you were a bad actor that caused your program to lose its license, you couldn't just move on and open up a new program. Those concerns are addressed and fixed in the -1, but we would take that -1 amendment, and what we would build onto it is one, a clarification that the bill applies only to new applications after the effective date of the bill. So everyone that is currently providing services in Oregon, they don't have to make any changes to what they are doing as long as they are continually operating. So they can have their licenses, certifications, or approvals renewed. But if their license is revoked, if they close up a program, they just stop operating for any reason, they would need to change before they reopened. The change in requirement for those moving forward for the new pieces are that any organization that was offering these services in Oregon would need to be incorporated under the laws of the state of Oregon. So it would have to be a domestic corporation. It could not be an LLC, which is something that we have in other human service programs just in terms of liability and transparency. And it could not have associations with kind of foreign corporations, nonprofit, professional corporations, or for-profit corporations that are headquartered outside of the state. That pretty much covers all of our providers in Oregon. It would not limit the growth of kind of Oregon-grown providers in Oregon. What it would do is allow more control for kind of an outside organization or chain to come in and set up a system of services that would compete with those programs and create the challenges that we're seeing in terms of enforcement from the Department of Human Services. So bottom line, to make it really simple, what the bill does is that it states that moving forward to provide DD services in Oregon, you need to be an Oregon company. That's pretty much it. Are there questions? I see a question on Senator Lieber's face.
So this would, moving forward, this would prohibit any applicant that is from outside of the state from applying to provide DD services at all in the state. I mean, is that you're prohibiting people from?
So
because I'm thinking, what if we have somebody who's across the river in Vancouver, Washington, and they may, be able to provide excellent services, but they would be from out of state. And so then they would be barred, and that might cause some problems.
No, they wouldn't. They would not be barred. All they would have to do is incorporate their business inside the state of Oregon. So the business would be an Oregon corporation. So you can live any place and incorporate your business under the laws of any state. So it would be incorporated. You could live in Washington, you could live in Indiana, but it would be incorporated under the laws of the state of Oregon.
In order, and the problem that you're trying to solve by doing that is just to try to prevent big corporations from coming in?
Correct, because generally, unless you're looking at, somebody across the river in Vancouver, the big entities are not kind of homegrown. They are not here within the state of Oregon. And this really becomes one of two bills in this session. One was brought by the department, and this is another, to address this multi-year challenge with this very large provider. You can't change your enforcement mechanisms. They have to be equitable across all of the programs that you're monitoring in the state. This would provide that.
It's 4 o'clock.
Sorry, that's my computer that always tells me what time it is. This would provide that protection. So you have, in Oregon, within the DD system, it is a very community-based program that kind of grows up from within the roots and families and providers within the state. It would prevent kind of the large chain organizations from coming in, and it would prevent that type of structure that you see in some organizations. We talked about a couple of weeks ago the kids programs, where you had one giant LLC in the sky, and in every state, each entity was organized as its own nonprofit or for-profit. They move their money up to the big LLC in the sky, and when someone dies, there's nobody to be held accountable because there's no money sitting in that corporation. And the big corporation says, that wasn't us, that was the Oregon facility, they're not really us. This gets us away from that problem.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And then we have signed up Amanda Dalton. Amanda, are you here? I'm seeing her there. Amanda, you might be muted, and if you've called in, you'll need to hit *6. Let me text her really quickly. Just give it 1 second. All right, I am not seeing her, and I don't think we have anybody else signed up on this one. Do we, Cheyenne, no last minute ones on this one?
Madam Chair, no last minute individuals. And I do see Amanda in the room.
Yeah.
Perhaps you could leave it open, come back to it in case she has stepped away from her device or her computer.
All right.
And didn't hear her name called.
Okay. I will do that. So I'm going to temporarily recess the public hearing on Senate Bill 725. And then I'm going to open up the public hearing on Senate Bill 686.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Senate Bill 686 requires certain licensed hospitals, state hospitals, and secure intensive community inpatient facilities to offer a choice to individuals receiving inpatient psychiatric services to receive care in person and on-site or electronically, and to inform these individuals of their right to choose.
Thank you, Cheyenne. And first up, we have Ann Casper, and Senator Frederick intended to be here with us today, but had a matter that he needed to attend to that made it impossible for him to be with us. So he has left it in Ann's capable hands. Ann.
Thank you, Senator Gelster. Senator Gelster, Vice Chair Anderson, and members of the committee. I am Ann Casper, and we're going to have a PowerPoint. I'm here today Today I work as a warm line operator. That means I hear from peers all over the state what's really going on in the hospitals, in the treatment centers, everywhere, from Toledo to Umatilla. And I'm also here as somebody who helped design on 12 committees the Unity Center for Behavioral Health Care. I actually got 1/3 of their treatment plan to be trauma-informed care. I'm very proud of that. I also helped design and worked at the CATSI, which is a subacute in Portland, Oregon. I worked there for 3 years. I helped design and work to build the mental health court. And today we have Dr. Jack Hatchick with me, Chris Bona from NAMI, and Nick Shaya Chakorn. I hope I got his name right. And we're going to start off with a PowerPoint, and Terry's going to help out with that. Terry? Thank you very much. This is Oregon Senate Bill 686. It's telehealth choice. It's for inpatient and secure residential only, and we have submitted an amendment excluding rural designated facilities. Terry, please change the thing. So Senate Bill 686 is endorsed by 75 people who signed the petition. We have an online petition at change.org, and we will get you all those names. It has been voted on and also endorsed by the Mental Health Addictions Association of Oregon, Mind Freedom International, the National Association of Mental Illness Oregon, and NEAPRS in New York, the Association of Psychiatric Rehabilitation Services. Now, I do want to bring up, this is something new where NAMI and the peers are working together. Next slide, please. So who are we? We're a small group of concerned citizens who created this without any funding. We know from personal experience that choice heals in mental health care. When our institutions, natural supports, families, and friends give us choices for the right support, safe spaces, and tools, we can heal. Next, please. This is the small team that worked on it, and I'm very, very proud because we started off, the team is actually youth, and they're all under 30 years old. We started with a big team, and it turned out at the end, because it's very arduous to make a bill, Nick and Novelle and I worked together on it at the very end. But we did get input, and it's youth advocates, youth RA, refugee, and BIPOC members. Next, please. So once you know, we are paying, when we go to get a psychiatric facility, inpatient care in private hospitals about $1,200 a night, and the psychiatric emergency services can go up to $5,000 a night. We think we deserve the best care, and also insurance companies want the best care for us, paying these prices. Next, please. So inpatient telehealth, the setup. Now it's COVID, we can't go in and take pictures of hospitals and what's going on. So you're just gonna have to imagine what it's like. Usually it's in a craft room, extra TV room, or closet, because hospitals were not built for telehealth. This was not designed. I know this for sure, because when we built CATSI and a couple of years ago, Unity, we never envisioned that telehealth would be used as a provider. There are always 1 or 2 staff attendants present to watch the equipment and generally take notes on what the patients are doing. The patient may not know the attendant. There's no privacy of the prescriber. Screen can be a large screen or even iPad size. Sometimes there are technical Wi-Fi difficulties. Patients are led in one by one, like an assembly line, and the patients don't know which order they're going to come in. We searched and we didn't find any state of Oregon clinical standards on inpatient telehealth. Next, please. Who uses inpatient telehealth today? We discovered that Unity, Coos Bay, McNary, a secure residential treatment facility, and not at this time Cedar Hills, Oregon State Hospital, and Providence Systems usually don't use it. We had a hard time even getting a list of hospitals in Oregon. So we tried to contact all of them and find out what's going on. Next, please. The problem, real life examples. So 2 years ago, I was in Unity for behavioral health, and at that time, on the weekends, they only offered telehealth prescribing. And I had a roommate, let's just call her Monique. I won't use her real name. She was Black. It was her first time in a psychiatric hospital. She goes in for the telehealth session, comes out and says, "What the F was that? I came here for help. This is not going to help me." So in 2020, I ended up in the PES unit at Unity, and they didn't have any room for me inpatient. This was in January. This is before COVID. Like with a bunch of us, because somehow there's some agreement between Medicaid and also Medicare and the state of Washington, they ship a bunch of us up to this place called Rainier Springs. As I was staying in Rainier Springs for 6 days, I was given 5 different psychiatric prescribers who were not even in the state of Washington themselves. And also coming out of there, I couldn't get my medication because they didn't have the rights to prescribe in that state. So we don't want that to happen in Oregon. And in 2020, we heard 2 weeks ago at a meeting, and we'll call him Joe, at McNary Place in Eastern Oregon, SRTF, which is a secure residential facility, he gone blinded because he was over-medicated, and that provider was about 28 miles away and refused to come and help. We also heard on the Governor Brown System of Care Council, now this is about children, and this bill is not about children, but I want to add that Dr. Randy Phelps said that he works with children in Eastern Oregon. He went to go take care of 2 children who had been getting telehealth care. He found them to be zombies there, totally over-medicated. And but this bill is not about that, but I did want to add that. Next, please. So the solution, SB 686 guarantees that you as a patient are given the choice and the right to receive care from a live, not dead, somebody made a joke about that, not dead, in-person prescriber, psychiatrist, nurse practitioner prescriber on site when you are inpatient or secure residential setting. Not telehealth for outpatient physical conditions is carried in this bill. That's not under this. Next, please. Good reasons for online telehealth care in these facilities. You could get appropriate cultural and linguistic care. For example, if you're from Somalia, and there's no Somali doctor here in Oregon, psychiatrist prescriber that I know about, you could actually get good care from a Somali doctor in a different state using telehealth. Also, a lot of people in the psychiatric systems tend to be repeat patients. They keep coming back again and again and again. The doctors actually grow weary of these patients, and so telehealth could offer these patients a fresh way of getting treatment, a fresh voice, a fresh way of looking at it. Negatives of online telehealth care when an inpatient facility include that sometimes these practitioners, and we don't know the numbers, are not even in the state of Oregon. These doctors can have decisions and make decisions in a patient's civil rights and liberties case and get them actually lose their civil liberties up to 180 days in civil commitment without even seeing this patient in person. These doctors are not available after the short telehealth sessions and cannot correct mistakes in orders, which can affect getting medication as well as just going out to get some fresh air. The doctors cannot see all the physical side effects. Can you see my leg shaking? No. And there's no chance for continuing care. These doctors have no connection and communication with family and natural supports in Oregon. And it could actually just be scary for a person in an extreme state, or you like to call psychosis, who are scared of screens in the first place. And these patients may not give truthful answers or have trust of a person on the screen. And last, many facilities, they were not built with good Wi-Fi, and that's why patients have no access. Basically, most patients don't have any access to computers when they're inpatient. And for some reason, too, the facilities also take their cell phones away for most of the time. So thank you. Next, please. Why is choice beneficial? It's trauma-informed care. It creates trust, and choice heals. Next, please. I won't go through all of this, but we started in the spring of 2020 with a large group of people who were BIPOC refugees, and the Oregon youth advocate, Joseph Stefanenko, came up with the idea of choice. How are we going to handle this? We contacted many agencies, government people. We actually didn't receive any guidance on how to write a bill. So there are some things in the bill that are not quite accurate, and we're working on an amendment to change them. In the process, also in the fall, we met with many kind legislators to find out, how does this work? How do we do this? We launched choiceheals.com in Spanish and English and have the bill there and have reached out to Spanish speakers. And we also launched the petition, change.org Choice Heals. Next, please. We contacted international academic researchers to get citations. There's very little out there.
I'm going to ask you to summarize because we're at about 10 minutes.
We are. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So we actually met with the Oregon Hospice Association a couple of weeks ago. We heard them, and next, please. So we are working on amendment, and we heard them about the corresponding ORSs, and next, please. And that's it. So mental health recovery is possible when institutions give us the right compassionate support, community safe spaces, and effective mental health healing skills. Thank you. We're here for questions.
Thank you so much. And I think we're going to hold the questions just because we have so many people on this bill and the next bill as well. So next we have up JSEC and followed by Chris. And if you could try to keep your comments to about 3 minutes, that would help us make sure everyone gets a chance to offer their thoughts today. And thank you for that great overview, Ann.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chair Gelser, Vice Chair Anderson, and committee members. I'm Dr. Jack Hotchik, Director of Dynamic Changes, LLC. I'm also a retired psychologist and past administrator of mental health programs in 4 states. My testimony on Senate Bill 686 is informed in part by my participation in the creation of the Mid-Willamette Valley Acute Care Mental Health Services involving Salem Hospital and Good Samaritan Hospital in Corvallis, and management of hospital services for one of the large Denver, Colorado mental health quadrant programs, Park East Mental Health Center. I support Senate Bill 686 with whatever amendments might be needed to resolve any definitional or technical difficulties. The standard of care for evaluation and treatment during inpatient services has been in-person psychiatric contact facilitating a comprehensive and dynamic interpersonal process. Research of telehealth being used in mental health care has shown benefits in the delivery of services, while the effectiveness of mental health treatments using telehealth continues to be investigated and to date is inconclusive for many services. With respect to Senate Bill 686's requirement that a person be given an option for in-person engagement with their psychiatric providers, important clinical factors need to be considered. When a person is in a psychiatric inpatient facility, they are routinely in one of their most vulnerable sets of circumstances. Not only is the environment itself easily disorienting, but research has shown that many such individuals are experiencing the effects of trauma at such times. A key treatment factor for reducing trauma effects and any associated symptoms is providing an individual with control over their environment to enhance an improved experience of safety. Senate Bill 676 would provide one mechanism for such control and improved feelings of safety: the opportunity to choose. To those, it would be provided to those who are discomforted when only relating virtually with their psychiatrist. Additionally, adapting treatment to an individual's unique needs, values, and preferences, called individualized care, is not only recognized as enhancing mental health care effectiveness, but it has been shown to be the most necessary when a person's vulnerability high and their circumstances complex. Senate Bill 686 does that for hospitalized individuals. Senate Bill 686 provides a clinically sound modification to inpatient care where only virtual psychiatric services are currently offered. Please pass Senate Bill 686. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next up we have Chris Boneff.
Chair Gelser, members of the committee, my name is Chris Boneff. I am with the Oregon chapter of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, more commonly known as NAMI Oregon. We're a grassroots membership governed organization with 15 chapters across the state that provides free education and support programs to basically everyone affected by mental illness. Our membership's composed, we're people who live with mental illnesses, such as myself. We're family members who have a loved one living with mental illness. We're parents raising children with mental health disorders, or many of us tick multiple boxes. Here speaking in favor of the concept of Senate Bill 686, I'd like to thank my colleague and friend Ann Casper for bringing this forward, point you to my written testimony on OLAS, and then just cut sort of to why this conversation, regardless of what the final legislation looks like, and we do hope that the conversation continues on amendments that makes this workable. But why these conversations are so important to bring forward is the giant disparity we have in our healthcare system. And I raise the perspective of the family member caring for a loved one in inpatient psychiatric care. My loved one attempted self-harm, ended up in a medical bed for 4 days, at which time we had open access to caregivers and clinicians and psychiatrists. I was able to sit in that room with my loved one. I was able to bring in meals to my loved one. I was able to ask every question I could think of the psychiatrist who came in daily to check on my loved one. I was able to sit and play games with my loved one. After 4 days in a medical bed, my loved one was put into inpatient psychiatric care, and my loved one might as well disappeared. We were limited in our visitation to 90 minutes in the evening. We as a family lost any kind of contact with clinician, including the psychiatrist who was treating my loved one. Basically, a iron curtain went down, and my loved one might as well have disappeared. I would also point out that the disparity in a medical bed versus an inpatient bed for psychiatric care is a stressful, Spartan, harried environment. It is not always conducive to healing. And so having the choice to have in-person clinical services, particularly a psychiatrist who is now prescribing you some of the most serious medications that anybody on the planet could take, preserving that choice where practical is absolutely important to the healing process. Also preserving access for the family to discuss their loved one and the care that they will need once they leave that intensive level of care is absolutely critical to continuing on in the recuperation process. I would just close that where practical, in-person access is absolutely necessary. And again, we look forward to those working on this legislation and those who may be coming forward with concerns. I hope they continue the dialogue and get us to a final product. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next up we have Nick Chayakakorn. I'm sorry for mispronouncing.
Oh, no worries. No worries. I'll get on the chat. You're all good. Chair Gelser, members of the committee, thank you for letting me speak. My name is Nick Chayakakorn. I'll get the full spelling in the chat, of course, if that's needed. So I'd like to speak.
If you email it to Cheyenne, that would be great, but we are not allowed to use the chat. Public record ads.
No worries, no worries. All right, I get to Cheyenne on that. Anyway, so I'd like to speak about why in-person psychiatry is so important to youth. And in fact, I ask a lot of my friends to help. This whole legislative push is powered by personal stories. And we come from the perspectives of young adults with mental health conditions, just trying to navigate the system. So my friends are marginalized in many ways. We often have few supports by each other. And so I think we represent the face of the youth mental health crisis. And I think we'd like a seat at the table for this. So now I'm going to tell you 3 personal stories. I hope they'll give you a taste of life inside our shoes as young adults navigating the mental health system. And so most importantly, they stress that young adults like us living through a mental health crisis deserve to have the extra support of a psychiatrist in person. And, we should make every effort to make it available. It's a very easy intervention to support us. Anyway, so I hope it'll convince you of the importance of our bill. So for example, I am 25. I took years of college due to crippling anxiety, OCD, and depression. I was agoraphobic. I come from an Asian family. They knew nothing about supporting my mental health condition. And as a result, I am estranged from my parents. My mental peers and clinicians in Portland are my only supports. But when I have contemplated suicide, I feel worthless and I get exhausted of feeling worthless. So what if I was hospitalized after an attempt? Well, do you think a psychiatrist from behind a screen will make me feel like it was worth something? No, of course not. I feel as if the system was kind of doing the bare minimum to keep me alive. It's kind of statutory requirement. And we are aware about how youth suicide rates are on the rise, especially since this pandemic started. And so I think we'll agree that while Oregon is kind of building up the capacity of its health system, in-person psychiatry is a quick intervention to support youth. I think it's also strange, and this might be an aside, but for someone with anxiety and depression, medications give me hope. And I think everyone with a mood disorder has that feeling of hoping that the next medication will finally lift his burden off us. And so seeing a psychiatrist in person makes that hope kind of tangible. All right. Let me just try to continue. I'm trying to cut this down. This is kind of long. Anyway, so I have a few other stories to tell. And I'm going to try to scroll down and see what I can kind of put in. So, all right. I'd like to know that the people I speak for, they're diverse, they're gender nonconforming. We come from cultures that contact the parents about mental health. We end up in the Medicaid sector navigating the role of sliding scale clinics, and we often only have each other in crisis. So what do they say? I think they tell me, at least I asked them, that a psychiatrist person gives us contact and accountability that we rarely get. So a peer of mine with psychosis, for example, says that she found seeing a psychiatrist in person grounding, even necessary. When she was in crisis, she experienced messages coming from screens from everywhere. And that would have only been aggravated by telepsychiatry, a psychiatrist locked behind a screen. And so both for all of us experiencing extreme states, this grounding is crucial. Actually, here's another one, and I think this one's really important to me. So a friend of mine who considers themselves gender nonconforming left unsupportive parents to start a new life in Portland. And they say there are 1,000 little ways that youth like them who don't fit in any of the usual gender boxes are hurt by the mental health system. So for example, psychiatrists don't know how hormone therapies and psychiatric drugs react. And in fact, clinicians often get defensive about this. And actually, as pertains to kind of inpatient treatment, they fear being put in a cycle. Why? Because it's not clear who they feel comfortable with in a double room. What combination of body expression and gender identity would make them feel comfortable? So what do they say about in-person psychiatry? They said that at the very least...
You to sum up a little bit here.
No, absolutely. They said that a psychiatrist in person make them feel more accountable to them. And ultimately, I think this is what this bill is really about to us. It's about kind of the choice in person psychiatrist. It provides crucial support. It grounds us. And actually, it makes you feel like we finally have someone to hold accountable, because there is very little of that right now. And so I think as a youth mental health advocate, I urge you all to support SB 686 for accountability, for youth, and for support that we rarely get. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nick. All right, next up, we have Andy Easton.
Good afternoon, Chair Gelsler, Vice Chair Anderson, and members of the Senate Committee. I'm Andy Easton with the Oregon Association of Hospitals and Health Systems. Thank you for this time today to share how this bill will have unintended consequences if hospitals are not able to provide psychiatric services via telehealth. The intent behind the bill is laudable and one that our members strive to reach each and every day. Oregon's inpatient psychiatric units do not use telepsychiatry for regular patient care and interactions. However, there is the need to have flexibility to use telepsychiatric care in a number of situations. Telepsychiatry may be helpful and preferred to access a culturally specific provider or a provider with a language capacity who could only be accessed via telehealth. In addition, the bill is not limited to only inpatient psychiatric services. As drafted, it would impact all services under the hospital's licensing, including our emergency departments, inpatient acute care, and outpatient services. These services need the allowance for telepsychiatry in their normal operations. With me today is Dr. Robin Henderson from Providence Health and Services, that she can explain and provide some additional stories as well as how we use telepsychiatry and how this will have some unintended consequences. So I would like to introduce Dr. Robin Henderson.
Thank you. And Robin. And while Robin's coming up, if you are not currently speaking, if you could turn your camera off, that makes it possible for the signal to go out to everyone, and it also allows the streaming feed to feature the person that's actually speaking. So thank you. Welcome, Dr. Henderson.
Thank you, Chair Gelser and members of the committee. I am Dr. Robin Henderson, and I am the Chief Executive of Behavioral Health for Providence Services here in Oregon. I'm also the Chair of the Behavioral Health Technical Advisory Committee for the Oregon Association of Hospitals and Health Systems. And I want to give a shout out to Ann, because I do remember that old telehealth equipment in the closet, and you'd pull it out and it was wonky and huge. And the reality is COVID taught us a lot. COVID gave us an opportunity to learn new technology and unlearn some lessons that really have held Oregon psychiatric units back. And I want to give you a few examples. We now use iPads for our teleservices, which have been configured to have limited functionality so they can be used safely by individuals who are safe to have that type of equipment without a staff member present. We also allow patients to use their cell phones and to keep them with them on the unit if they're, again, deemed safe and can agree to not take photographs and other types of things of other individuals who are there. That's allowed people to be able to communicate with their friends and loved ones in ways that a year ago, I would never have told you we were doing that. But here's some of the other things that we want to talk about and raise. Prior to COVID, tele was primarily limited to utilization in the emergency departments for psychiatric evaluations all across Oregon, especially for children who didn't have access to psychiatric consultation right there in their hospital. We only have 13 psychiatric units in hospitals in Oregon, so there really are only 13 to 15 hospitals that have psychiatric consultation on site. So tele became something that was essential to be able to get a second opinion, or even that be able to divert someone from care. We also see this as essential in underserved communities. And I want to give you an example from Bay Area Hospital. They have a provider who lives out of state. So the provider comes in and actually works in the hospital for a week. Then they go back to their home, I believe it's in Idaho, and they see their patients via tele. So this person is able to provide care in a community that's not necessarily described as rural, but is definitely underserved by psychiatry. And that's an essential way for us to be able to keep services available across Oregon. During COVID, tele was the only way we could communicate with people in congregate care settings during the most critical times when we didn't have enough PPE to make people safe. So our psychiatrists were seeing people on an iPad. They would have them on an iPad in one room, and the patient would be on an iPad in another room, so that we could limit exposure to people who were going in and out of the unit and limit the exposure potential for them to get COVID. We still do that sometimes when we have outbreaks, especially in our senior psychiatric unit. It's been essential for us in our partial hospital programs. This is how we've been able to keep partial hospital programs open. The use of tele has allowed us to see, right now we've got 89 people at Prov Portland in the partial program and 72 people at Prov St. Vincent. That's just 2 programs alone that are operating with tele providers because we don't have enough room to do it any other way. They're essential to covering inpatient services when we have a doc who may leave or we can't get a locums person in fast enough and we can't get them credentialed. We have to do something because we can't afford to close beds right now. But I can tell you, in talking with my colleagues, no one is using this for routine care other than that example I gave you at Bay Area. And I think they've really found a way to uniquely do this. If we have that ability to do this, we think that we can provide better services where people are. And I agree with everyone who's talked about the importance of in-person services. In an ideal planet, we would have enough prescribers and psychiatrists to be able to service all of our communities. But this is one tool that we have that we think, in partnership with the advocacy community and the consumers, we can make better. And we really look forward to having conversations about how we can improve this bill and make it workable. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. I really appreciate it. Next up, we have Dr. Sarah Walker.
Chair Gelser, Vice Chair Anderson, members of the committee. I am Dr. Sarah Walker. I am the interim Chief Medical Officer at the Oregon State Hospital. Prior to taking this interim role, I was the Chief of Psychiatry for 6 years. So I can echo a lot of what Robin was saying about psychiatrist provider shortages. Having been responsible for hiring psychiatrists for 6 years, I can tell you right now that is not a if you build it, they will come scenario. There has been a provider shortage in psychiatry for years, and it will probably be another half decade to a decade before we have enough graduates to really sort of get our numbers more robust as clinicians. But I'm here to talk about how the bill as written would impact OHA and outline 4 specific things that I think would benefit from further clarification. I'm really grateful to hear that amendments to address some of these things are already in the works. OHA has no position on the bill. I just want to highlight a small number of things. The first is clarification about the language about which facilities are affected, because it specifies a hospital license under ORS 441.015, so that's broad hospital, a state hospital, and secure intensive community inpatient facility. We're not sure what that last one means. We don't know if that means a secure residential. Having heard Anne speak, it sounds like that was the intent. But we're also not certain if the intent is to include patients who are in emergency departments or receiving psychiatric consultation services in non-psychiatric hospital beds. If so, if the intent is SRTF or non-psychiatry beds in a hospital setting, there's no provision in the bill for how you deal with critical psychiatric provider shortages, which, as we've talked about, disproportionately affect folks in rural areas and other underserved communities. And in those kind of circumstances, telehealth definitely provides services that would otherwise be difficult or impossible to obtain. We also recognize that sort of a mandate for being able to provide in-person care is likely to make it more expensive and or difficult for rural areas to be able to do so. Just because they would need to increase staffing, they would need to increase cost to maintain around-the-clock availability of a local provider. And in particular in rural communities, they may not have their provider may be far enough distant that showing up in person is a pretty significant barrier to that person continuing to work at the facility. The second point of clarification is pertinent to Section 1, subsection 2C, particularly the inclusion of civil commitment proceedings, which is the exact quote from the bill, with assessments and evaluations of a defendant's mental capacity or qualifying mental disorder. The term proceedings implies that the actual commitment hearing itself is included, which raises several points for us. Number one, speaking as a representative at the Oregon State Hospital, where our patients are subject to a very large variety of hearings, many of which take place on site, but many of which do not these days, whether all of those other types of hearings would be included. This would also be pertinent to the Pendleton Cottages SRTF, which is a state-run facility. Their patients appear at PSRB hearings virtually. A lot of these hearings are done virtually and were done virtually pre-COVID. And to be frank, speaking as a psychiatrist, I don't consider a hearing to be an assessment or evaluation, so it's an odd pairing to me. So basically, requiring an in-person presence of the patient and or the psychiatric practitioner, especially if the hearing is in a separate location, creates a fairly large degree of logistical cost and patient care impacts in relation to patient transport and reduced availability of the practitioner to care for their other assigned patients. If I have a caseload on the state hospital grounds and I have to spend 3 hours going someplace else to be at a hearing because I've expected to be there in person, that's that much time I can't spend taking care of my other folks. The third point, excuse me, I need to cough. There we go. Frog in my throat because it's allergy season. The third point of clarification relates to just reasonable expectations. So for a patient admitted to the state hospital or an acute care hospital psychiatric bed, the general practice is already in-person assessment. And again, I don't know a practitioner who would disagree that that is the gold standard, and that is definitely what we would all be preferring to do, especially with folks who are severely ill enough and acutely symptomatic enough that that's the level of care that they require. And so we are accustomed to doing our initial and our ongoing assessments which are considered separate services for the billing and reimbursement perspective in person. So telehealth provision of these services by hospital psychiatry staff is now permissible only because of two different waivers that were issued in relation to the COVID pandemic. Otherwise, it's typically not generally allowed. But the bill provides really no, just in case, there's a get out of jail card if we have any other kind of pandemic, if we have any sort of major disaster, if we have a bad earthquake and it's really hard to get practitioners to the hospital and telehealth is the best you can do, the wording of the bill as is doesn't give you the opportunity to substitute telehealth where you would ordinarily do in-person services. And there's the critical provider shortage we've already talked about. Similarly, do I need to wrap up?
Yeah, we still have about 20 people.
Okay, I'll go quick.
We're not going to get through today. We're going to have to carry some things over.
Yeah. One of the other the other pieces that I wanted to mention, because that one subsection refers to evaluations, that might affect how our forensic evaluation service, which is technically an outpatient service, but it's located in our hospital, does its business. And then the other question I had is about the intent of the term other mental health care provider, because it identifies physicians and then it says other mental health care provider, and that's a really, really broad statement. The way the bill is worded would imply that another mental health care provider could prescribe medications, which if that person is a PMHNP, makes sense. If that person is a psychiatrically trained PA and they're licensed to do so, that makes sense. But mental health care provider is a really, really broad term. So from a languaging perspective, that portion of the bill would benefit from some clarification. And that's really all the clarification points that we were looking for. Again, we support in-person services. We want to support our patients. We need to be able to be flexible when circumstances absolutely require it.
Great. Thank you so much. And can you provide all of those points in written testimony as well, please?
It's there. Yep, you should have it.
All right. Thank you so very much. All right. Next up on this, and I'm not sure that these two folks are actually signed up for this bill. Barb Rainish, are you planning to speak to this bill or to the other bill? All right. I'm not hearing Barb. What about Adam? Mr. Adam? Is there an Adam? All right. And Cheyenne, I again, as earlier, am seeing these people on the list. And I know that happened with Amanda Dalton too. She apparently was trying to talk, but we could not hear her. So
Yes, Madam Chair, I do see someone with the name Rainish who is in the room.
I'll be able to.
Unmuted.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Is. Yes.
I was between. Anyway, I was going to speak on both 680 and 686.
All right. So why don't we take your testimony now on 686 as briefly as possible?
I'm going to give it to you as briefly as possible because I've heard. Oh, sorry, Barb Rainish. I live in Multnomah County, and I'm a person with lived experience. And I was going to give the background of that because I thought we were going to go in order of bills, but that's okay. We'll just skip all that. And I wanted to let you know that as a person with lived experience, I was in a bad way at one point, and I was taken by a family member to an ER, not in Oregon. And through telehealth, which if it had been called that, I would have ran at the moment that they said that. This whole tele thing, that really sounds cutesy to me. But I was basically had made the decision after 2.5 hours in the ER that it wasn't the right place for me. So since the only mental health person I saw was somebody over a screen, it was really easy for me to, just show him what I wanted to show him and not be upfront with what was really going on. And there's a lot of people like me that are very smart with mental health illness and problems. And when we go in for help, a lot of times we're vacillating back and forth between whether we want to stay or whether we don't. So that is my testimony on that. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. And do we have Mr. Adam on the line?
Madam Chair, I don't see anyone
right
by that name on the list.
All right. So with that, I believe that I have gotten to everybody that was on Senate Bill 686. Oh, except for Kevin Fitz. Kevin, did you want to speak on this bill?
Senator Gelser, members of the committee, my name is Kevin Fitz. I'm a volunteer with the Oregon Mental Health Consumer Association. I want to just say I'm very encouraged by Ann Casper's bill, SB 686, and I'm glad that we're having a formal discussion on this, and I concur with the comments of my colleague Chris Boneff at NAMI, and I'm in support of this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. You win the prize today. So I believe that now I have everybody from Senate Bill 686. Remember, if you did not get a chance to speak to this and you were waiting to, the record is open until tomorrow at 3:15, so you have the ability to put written testimony in. So we still need to hear Senate Bill 680, and there is no way that we are going to get through all of the testimony on that today. So we are going to be carrying that over, at least in part, to our Thursday hearing. I would like to bounce back quickly. Amanda, are you still in the room so that we don't carry this over a second time on Senate Bill 725? Oh, I'm closing the public hearing on Senate Bill 686 and reopening the public hearing on Senate Bill 725. And Amanda, are you available?
Chair Gilser, can you hear me?
Yes, there you are.
Okay, wonderful. Sorry about that. Apparently the public could see me, so just a word of caution, your camera is always on. Amanda Dalton, I'm here today on behalf of the Oregon Resource Association. Our board is comprised of Oregon nonprofit providers, and we do have for-profit associate members. All of our members provide residential housing and employment services to individuals experiencing intellectual and developmental disabilities across Oregon. I do want to thank Senator Gelser for the work and time that she has spent with our members, perhaps a little bit more than she wanted, but as you know, long evenings and weekends, and working on language around Senate Bill 725. And while we're not entirely there today, we are appreciative of the intent behind Senate Bill 725 to ensure that bad actors are not able to essentially reinvent themselves while not unduly shutting down providers who are providing crucial supports in our state, or shutting down employment paths for leadership team members who were not directly engaged in adverse findings. And we do look forward to the next round of amendments and are hopeful that they address those concerns.
Great. Thank you very, very much. And with that, unless there's questions for Amanda, any questions for Amanda? Seeing none. Thank you, Amanda. And I'm going to close the public hearing on Senate Bill 725. And I'm going to open up the public hearing on Senate Bill 680. Cheyenne, can you do a very brief summary?
Yes, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 680 requires the Oregon Health Authority to fund and monitor at least one peer-run organization that operates 3 peer respite centers, each capable of serving up to 6 persons in distress with mental illness for 2 weeks, and 1 each in Portland metropolitan area, Southern Oregon region, and Eastern Central Oregon region, and also appropriates funds for that purpose.
Thank you, Cheyenne. And as on our prior bill, Senator Frederick is not able to be with us today. He sends his apologies. I am not entirely sure who to kick off with, so I'm going to start with Commissioner Mirren, if she is still with us. And I see Commissioner Mirren on the participants list. So Commissioner, if you can hear us.
Yes, sorry. I'm so sorry. It is. It is good to see you. Thank you so much for your patience with that. So Chair Gelser, Vice Chair Anderson, and members of the committee. My name's Sharon Myron, and I am a Multnomah County Commissioner and a practicing emergency room doctor. And I am very pleased to offer testimony in support of Senate Bill 680 today. 2 years ago, I testified in favor of a similar bill because the need for peer-delivered respite, crisis prevention, and support services was clear and urgent. Since then, the need has only grown, and the evidence in support of these services has become much more compelling. I'm proud to advocate again for these important services. When I came into office a little over 4 years ago, my top priority continues to be, to improve our mental health system. This was driven in part by my experiences in the emergency room. I can't think of a single shift I've ever worked where I don't see at least one person who is in the ER because of a behavioral health crisis. We know that the emergency department is one of the least effective and most expensive and most traumatizing places to meet a person's mental health care needs. And yet we continue to see people come to the hospital because there often isn't an earlier intervention or support available. Peer-delivered respite, crisis prevention, and support services are an evidence-based, cost-effective, and smart alternative to the clinical and crisis-oriented services we more frequently invest in. Peer-staffed crisis respite is proven to reduce rates of Medicaid-funded hospitalizations and health expenditures for people who access the respite. We should consider these kinds of services an essential part of our system of care that makes other services more effective. So while my focus on mental health was first sparked by my experiences in the ER, what keeps this a top priority for me now is the passion and the voice of people with lived experience. Consumers, peers, and advocates have told us for years what they need, and I think our serious consideration of funding more peer-delivered services today is a reflection of that powerful work. This issue and need is not unique to Multnomah County, and as chair of the Association of Oregon Counties Health and Human Services Committee, I'm particularly supportive of this bill's direction to support peer respite in several communities across the state. As a policymaker, I'm committed to listening to people with lived experience and weighing that perspective with the other sources of evidence. The case for peer respite is a compelling one, no matter how you look at it. And I'm proud to offer my strong support for Senate Bill 680. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Commissioner Murin? Seeing them, thank you, and thank you for being so patient. And,
thank you.
And for the glitches. All right, next up, David Westbrook.
Chair Gelser, Vice Chair Anderson, and members of the committee. My name is David Westbrook, and I am the Chief Operating Officer at Lines for Life, where our mission is preventing substance abuse and suicide and promoting mental wellness. In 2020, we answered over 145,000 calls on 30-plus lines. The needs of callers are many and varied, and we are constantly helping callers consider their options. Of the people who call us, only a tiny fraction need hospitalization. The majority we can help de-escalate out of a state of crisis. Between hospitalization and de-escalation, however, the options are fewer than we would hope. In over a dozen other states around the country, peer crisis respite would be an option for individuals experiencing a behavioral health crisis. These services, which are trauma-informed, compassionate, and evidence-based, need to be an option here in Oregon. This is why Lines for Life is supporting Senate Bill 680. While we may wish that peer respite services were already easily available option, the truth is that now is an excellent time to be getting this into place. As many of you will know, Oregon, along with the rest of the country, is preparing for 988. 988 is a 3-digit number that's easily remembered by people in behavioral crisis, similar to 911 for people in physical crisis. In the best case scenario, the 988 system will have 3 components: a call center hub that operates as a care traffic control, dealing with immediate needs of individuals, mobile crisis that will be able to quickly reach out to those in need with teams of behavioral health specialists and crisis respite centers. In Lines for Life, Oregon has a statewide crisis center, but in order for 988 to be effective, we need to bolster our mobile crisis outreach, and we need to immediately begin building capacity for those individuals who need a place to be safe while in crisis. This is where peer respite services come in. They can play a major role in keeping individuals out of high-cost settings like hospitals while providing services that are culturally relevant, person-centered, trauma-informed, and proven to be effective. This is why I hope you will join Lines for Life in promoting mental wellness for all Oregonians by supporting Senate Bill 680. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. And next up, we have Kevin Fitz. With my apologies, it went over my head. You and I have been talking about this bill for months, and I don't know why I didn't have you introduce it. So welcome.
Thank you, Senator Gelser, Chair Gelser, and committee. My name, for the record, is Kevin Fitz. I am a volunteer with the Oregon Mental Health Consumer Association. I also sit currently on Governor Brown's 988 task force that David Westbrook talked about, and I've currently just been appointed to the Governor's Oregon Psilocybin Advisory Board, amongst other councils and work groups. I am here today to speak in support of SB 680, peer respite. Like Commissioner Myron said, this bill traveled through the Oregon State Legislature in 2019 in the Behavioral Health Committee and the House Health Committee, chaired by Representative Salinas. This passed that with a referral to Ways and Means. This got enthusiastic support by that House Committee 2 years ago. In fact, Representative Melissa Kenny-Geyer said it was one of the most profound hearings she'd ever been to. She was not familiar with the concept of peer respite. Like David Westbrook said, currently there's 14 states that have enacted peer respite across the country. There are about 33 of those currently in operation. Some of those have been put on a pause due to the COVID stuff, but there are other states that are still moving forward with their plans for peer respite. Particularly the large states, Ohio, Pennsylvania, California, New York, they all have recognized the value of peer respite. I should say, when I have not been in a patient, I live with the diagnosis of schizophrenia, and I have spent a significant amount of my adult life in extreme psychotic states. And when I have not been a patient of these systems, I've been an advocate. In 2001, Governor Kitzhaber, when I was working on a consumer engagement grant, sent me out to New Hampshire to look at what was the first peer respite in the United States, as far as we know. And I have been working on and off to bring this to attention to lawmakers. It's a small particular project. It doesn't meet everybody's needs. But as you will hear, and as you have heard from Commissioner Myron and the hospitals, this is a valuable resource, and it's something worth investing in. One of the things I wanted to say, just to piggyback on what Commissioner Myron said, to give this some more voice, 3 major councils within Oregon state government recommended in legislative session 2021 that this be purchased. And those are the Oregon Consumer Advisory Council, which we just talked about, which I'm the vice chair of. We recommended that. The Governor Brown's short-lived 12-month Behavioral Health Advisory Council at her office, which I was also a member of, that recommended that. And then finally, Governor Brown put together in mid-July the Racial Justice Council Task Force. And I believe it was sometime later on this fall that they also stepped up and endorsed this and said this is vital and we would need this. I do have some amendment language to talk about some of the arithmetic, and also we are hoping to specify and designate one of these particular facilities to be run and staffed by a peer-run organization of BIPOC individuals, for predominantly BIPOC individuals. And I will follow up with that amendment language. I will, for brevity, I will cut it short. Thank you, Senator Gelser, for all your support of people who live with mental health disorders and bringing consumer and
Kevin, I suddenly can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, Madam Chair, this is Cheyenne. It was audible and recorded. Can you hear me, Madam Chair?
But it could be me. Senator Anderson, can you hear Kevin?
Can you hear?
Yes,
Can you hear me?
yes, I can.
Okay.
Okay, everybody else can hear Kevin. I'm sorry, go on.
I was thinking, well, that was the part what I was getting to. I just wanted to thank Senator Gelser for her support of peers in Oregon for consumer engagement. These things are critical. 850,000 people sought mental health services or something like that, some description of that in 2015. That's about 1/5 of the population. Consumers of your mental health systems struggle for equity to talk about what values, what recovery looks like, what systems have helped them. It's unanimous. The people that I know who have received peer respite services in other states says it was a journey on meeting unpaid friends, people who had been fellow travelers with serious diagnoses and were getting back into life. I really, really want to just tell you how important peer respite is as a game changer. Plus the stories that you will hear from the people who were able to intervene earlier on before a full-blown episode, I think is of immense value just in the cost of recovery and the savings. Thank you much. Thank you very much, excuse me, for allowing me to speak to SB 680 today. Thank you.
Kevin, thank you so very much. I really appreciate it and appreciate all of you. So colleagues, we are at 5 o'clock. So we are going to carry over this measure to our Thursday hearing, where we will hear from those that are currently signed up that we have not yet heard from. So we will do that on Thursday. Just to give you an idea of how Thursday will go, we'll do the work sessions first, just so that we get those done before we go into the hearings. Cheyenne, do I close or do I recess or do I close the public hearing on this one?
Madam Chair, you're good to close the public hearing on Senate Bill 680. Okay. It's already pre-scheduled on its next future date, in addition to the carryover to this Thursday.
Great.
The only other bill on the Senate Bill 51, which wasn't ready today, would also need to be carried over to Thursday.
Perfect. So I'm going to close the public hearing on Senate Bill 680. We are going to carry it over to Thursday. We are going to carry over the work session on Senate Bill 51 to Thursday. We will do the work sessions first when we arrive on Thursday, just to move through those, allowing time for public hearings so we don't have to cut people off at the end. The bills that we have up on Thursday are the 3 tax credit bills. And I think Senator Taylor is familiar with that process. We kind of vet them and then we send them the ones that that we believe should move forward down to the Joint Committee on Tax Credits. And then we have 2 short bills. One of them is really a placeholder. So we should have plenty of time for this hearing on Thursday. So I apologize to all of those that we were not able to get to today. Clearly there is a lot of support for this measure and a lot of folks coming out to talk about it. So I appreciate all of you for taking the time to do so. Anything else for the good of the order from the committee? Not seeing anything. Thank you all very much, and I hope you all have a great Tuesday evening. See you on the floor tomorrow. We're adjourned.